November 9th, 2016. Today is the day that everybody's been talking about. Today, November 29th, 1947, is the day that way across the ocean, in America, in New York, near a place called Lake Success, the United Nations is going to vote if there should be 2 states, one Jewish and one Arab, right here in Palestine. Nobody knows how the vote will turn out. The other day I heard some grown-ups talking, and it was so confusing. They said something about a delegate who one day he said he would vote yes, and the next day he said he would vote no. There was something about a delegate who went missing, and then there was something about a delegate and a woman, but it wasn't his wife. And then they started talking in Yiddish, and I didn't understand anything they said. Everybody wants to hear the radio broadcast of the vote, but there's a problem. Here in Keren Avraham, my neighborhood in Jerusalem, there's only one radio, and that belongs to Mr. Lemberg. But Mrs. Kretschmal already said that she would bring the long extension cord from her husband's shop. He has a doll hospital, and give it to Mr. Lemberg. Mr. Lemberg is going to bring his radio. It's a big black box, and put it on a table on his balcony. All the neighbors are already making plans about how they're going to listen. Some from the balconies above, some from those underneath, some from the balconies across the way, and others in the courtyard below. But there's another problem. The vote won't happen in New York until late in the afternoon, which means it will be very late here at night. I begged my parents to let me stay up and listen, and they even argued about it in Russian, but then they said no, it would be way past my bedtime, and it's a school night. But my mother did promise that she would wake me up if anything special happened. So, I guess there's nothing else for me to do but to go to bed. I woke up all by myself. It was almost midnight, and I looked out my window into the courtyard, and it was full of people. Some had on their regular clothes, some had on their night clothes, but everybody had a jacket or a sweater because it's chilly outside. But they almost didn't look like real people. They were so still. So I opened my window, and it was silent. Nobody talked. Nobody moved. Nobody coughed. I didn't even hear the hum of mosquitoes. But then I heard it. It was the voice on the radio. It was towards the end of the vote. United Kingdom, abstain. Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, yes. United States, yes. Uruguay, yes. Venezuela, yes. Yemen, no. Uruguay, abstains. 33 votes for, 13 votes against, 10 abstentions, 1 nation absent from the vote. The United Nations proposal to partition Palestine is approved. And then over the radio there was clapping and cheering, but down in the courtyard below, it was silent, as if the words were hanging in the air. And then people began to clap and cheer too. I threw on some clothes and ran down the steps, and when I opened the door to the apartment building, somebody lifted me up in the air, and they handed me to somebody who handed me to somebody else, who handed me to somebody else, until finally I was in my father's arms, and he was hugging me, and my mother was hugging me, and everybody was cheering and clapping, and then on one side of the courtyard, I heard people singing Hatikva, and on the other side of the courtyard, they were singing Am Yisrael Chai. But my father, he doesn't sing very well. And he doesn't know the words to all of the songs. So he just stayed with the yell, which is kind of strange because you see, my father, he's a man of words. He speaks so many languages and he knows all about words. But tonight, it was as if his yell was more than all of the words in the world. It came from a place deep down inside of him, as if his whole being was one loud ah. And it felt as if the whole neighborhood, the whole city, the whole country, maybe even the whole world was one loud cry of joy. But then, I thought of my parents' friends, the Sawalis, who live in Sheikh Jarrah, and my friend Ibrahim, who lives across the city in Talbia. Maybe in those places, in Katamon and Baka and Gilo, maybe in those places they're not yelling with joy. Maybe there it's silent, like it was here just a few moments ago. Well, at any rate, my father put me on his shoulders, and together with my mother, we walked all around the neighborhood. Even though it was so late, the streets were full of people. The shopkeepers opened their shops and brought out sweets and drinks. In front of the synagogues, people were dancing with the Torahs and blowing the shofars. Drivers were driving through the streets, honking their horns. And young men stood on the roofs of British armored cars, waving the flag of a country that doesn't yet exist. And as we were walking, my father said, "Look around you. Take all of this in. You will remember this until your dying day. You will tell this story to your children and your children's children and to their children." And then we finally made our way back to the apartment, went into my room, and I went straight to sleep. It's really late, and I'm really tired, but I want to tell you what happened next. In my house, we never get up between the sheets in our street clothes. But tonight I did, and when my father came into my room, I thought he might yell at me, but he didn't. Instead, he told me a story one I hadn't heard before. When my father was a schoolboy in Russia, one day some bullies beat him up and called him names. When he got home, his father, my grandfather Alexander, said that he would go to the school first thing the next morning to demand an apology and to ask that my father's torn trousers be returned. But when my grandfather got there, the same bullies called him names, and they beat him up, and they tore his pants, and all around children were laughing and pointing, and the teachers stood, turned, and walked away. And my father told me, "That's over. It's done. There will still be bullies, and people might still call you names, but never again will it be because you are a Jew without a home. Those days are over. They're finished forever." And I reached my arm out, and I thought that maybe I would bump my father's glasses, but instead, I felt tears on his face. And in my entire life, I have never, ever seen him cry. And tonight, I didn't see him cry, but my left hand saw.